How should fantasy drafters be approaching Rashee Rice after the news that he will accept a 6-game suspension to begin the NFL season? How does it change fantasy drafts? Let's talk about it. This news coming down from Tom Pelissero. I know there are other NFL reporters that have it on Wednesday morning. Rashee Rice is accepting and will serve a 6-game suspension to start the 2025 regular season per sources. The NFL and the NFL Players Association are working to finalize the settlement, which will end Rice's disciplinary limbo and make him eligible to return Week 7 versus Las Vegas. That is according to Tom Pelissero of, who's he work for? NFL Network. Okay, so that's the news. How do we make it actionable for fantasy football? And is this better or worse for Rashee Rice and for folks drafting him than what would have been the case if he had just been in limbo with the previously known info? In my opinion, this is actually better for Rashee Rice and those drafting for him in fantasy. Previously, we thought Rashee Rice was going to have a disciplinary hearing on the 30th of September. That would have been after 4 weeks. It had been reported that Rashee Rice was potentially facing, if the NFL got its way, a suspension that would have gone at least half the season, which tells me the NFL was pushing for 8 to 10 games. Rashee Rice, probably his side wanted no games, obviously, but 4 games I think they would have been accepting of. And when they, on the NFL side of things, pushed hard and said, no, this is serious, 8 to 10 games, I think what happened is they said, all right, 6 is fine. Let's do it at the beginning so it doesn't impact, getting into the playoff push for the Kansas City Chiefs. Knowing that, I think is actually a huge benefit in your leagues. Let's run a quick mock draft here on Sleeper. I want to see, and look, this is just against computers. It's not going to be reflective necessarily of what happens in your real league drafts that are going on probably this coming weekend. But I want to just give you an idea of a team you could build. We're going full PPR, wide receivers, 2 of them, 2 flex, 2 running backs. So balanced type of lineup. I want to give you an idea of the type of team you could potentially build and then decide, okay, what is it that we want to do? Let's go Jonathan Taylor. Why not? Don't pay too much attention to these draft picks. Where does Rashee Rice fit into your team? And I may not even pick him. I may just kind of see, all right, where does the computer slot him, and then go from there and tell you, all right, here's where you may need to take him. Here's where it makes sense to take him, and maybe where it doesn't. We've still got Jaden Daniels as an option. Let's go ahead and lock him in, get us an elite quarterback. I think Rashee Rice is a top-flight fantasy option when healthy and when eligible to play. He's going to miss 6 weeks. That's okay. Now knowing that it comes at the beginning of the season, I think is actually an advantage to fantasy players. Like Trevion Henderson still available. This is not going to be a perfect reflection of what happens in a real draft. I think Rashee Rice was going around round 4, round 5. My prediction is what happens is that fantasy drafters are scared off by this 6-game suspension. I'm here to tell you it should embolden you to take Rashee Rice. I don't want to take him at this spot in the draft. I don't want to take him yet. Let's just take a DJ Moore. That's not a pick I would normally make, but we were running down on clock. Rice might go here in the early 5th. There he goes at the top of the 5th round, drafted with Patrick Mahomes in a stack. Let's say, as an example, let's see if we can get the computer to not take Rice. So, let's say he drops to you here in the middle of the 5th round. I am going to say that's a more than acceptable time to take Rashee Rice. And again, I know the computer took him at the top of the 5th. I think people knowing in stone that it's a 6-game suspension is going to scare people off. I think looking at Rashee Rice's situation before, folks who were paying attention probably knew that this was not only possible but likely to be the length of the suspension. I'll take Jalen Waddle. In PPR, I want to have 4 wide receivers who are fantastic. DJ Moore, I'm not sure about. I saw him taking snaps at running back recently. I could have gone McLaurin. Maybe my roster looks better if it's Terry McLaurin, if you're a fan of him. But just imagine your favorite receivers. And Rashee Rice is maybe number 3 or number 4 among those options. But the way that your team could really fit together, and frankly, this emboldens you in full PPR especially to go another step further. Igbuka's probably not even going to fall to the 7th sometimes, but I'm telling you, in many leagues, home leagues out there, he will. Let's take Emeka Igbuka and say, all right, Rashee Rice is suspended for 6 games. But I can have still a 4-pack of wide receivers in a lineup that that functions like this. And if you have 2 wide receivers, 1 flex in PPR, it's even better. Please be taking Rashee Rice because Lamb, let's say it's McLaurin, DJ Moore, maybe Devontae Adams falls to here. You could go Smith, you could go Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Flowers. There's a ton of options. But to have Rashee Rice potentially be like your 3rd best receiver, I think Tracy's a good running back too to grab this late. And we've got our elite quarterback in Jaden Daniels already locked in. I think Rashee Rice is going to be a league winner for people that understand within the context of their roster what they need to be doing and how they need to be approaching Rashee Rice. Let's see. We could go tight end, but let's just look at, some other running back options. Charbonnet, Jordan Mason, good running back options here late in the draft. Loveland goes. I want maybe like a Tucker Kraft coming back at tight end. I just want to get to the end of this and show you what a team could look like. Kraft goes, Kincaid goes. Kyle Pitts goes. Like, that's kind of ridiculous. There's not going to be a double tight end draft at that point. But let's just take a Jake Ferguson. I think he's going to get a ton of volume with Dallas. Doesn't bother me that I have CeeDee Lamb because I think those are along with Pickens, those are 3 guys that are going to catch the heck out of the football for the Cowboys. They don't have a running game. Totally reasonable. Krosky Merritt may not drop to the 11th in your league, but if he does, you can take him. I think that's a fun upside play. We're going to look at this team, and I think Rashee Rice really makes it sing. I think Rashee Rice puts it into such a good spot. If Benson or Braylon Allen are there in the 12th, just click the button. And then we'll take like a young wide receiver to round out our bench at the bottom. And then we'll show you the team. We'll show you kind of what we're looking at here because I think this is a great opportunity. Let's take Isaac Tesla for the Lions. He's gonna be that wide receiver 3. He's a fun stab to take at the end of a draft. I'm completely okay with that. Okay, let's reconvene here and let's take a look at what our lineup and our roster could look like in this setting. Okay? I feel like Rashee Rice is a wide receiver 1 for fantasy when he's on the field. Imagine, let's ask ourselves this. Like, if he was not going to be suspended this year, where would Rashee Rice be falling on this draft board? It's probably in the first 3 rounds, like Jackson Smith and Jigba territory, Ladd McConkey territory, T. Higgins territory. I think he's comparable to all those players, and I would take Rice, I think, over each and every one of them. So you're getting a multi-round discount on Rice. You say, well, but Brenden, I'm going to miss him for 6 games. That's why it's a multi-round discount, 100%. But tell me, as you're thinking through managing this fantasy roster, excuse me, Jaden, excuse me. As you're managing through this fantasy team, tell me how confident you might be in a lineup that goes, hey, Jaden Daniels, we've got him at quarterback. He's going to be a top flight option, one of the top 4 quarterbacks off the board. You get yourself a locked-in RB1. And maybe you would have taken Chase Brown here. Maybe Bucky Irving. Maybe you didn't like JT. That's fine. Don't get lost in the specifics of the names. Think archetype. I'm getting an RB1. I'm getting a mid-round RB2 like Tracy, who's going to get some volume for the Giants. But the receivers are what carries this team in full PPR. CeeDee Lamb, get yourself a receiver that you really like in that 3rd round where I picked DJ Moore. Excuse me, that was the 4th round. Devontae Adams could be there. Metcalf, McLaurin, Flowers, Sutton, all these are options. I think Rice will fall to the middle of the 5th more often than not because people weren't paying attention to the fact that he could have been suspended 8 to 10 games if the NFL got its way on this deal. The fact that it's only 6 games, the fact that we know now it comes at the beginning of the season allows you to plan around it so effectively. Emeka Egbuka is maybe not even the best example of the wide receiver that you would want to slide in because he could start slow since he's a rookie. I get that part of it, but I'm very confident in the 7th round value of Emeka Egbuka. But let's say you took somebody else. Let's say it's like an Adunze. Let's say it's Chris Olave, Cooper Kupp. Golden's not a great example because he's another rookie. Stephon Diggs, if you feel like he's a confident option for you. Pearsall, Shakir. These are guys that when Rice gets back, they're on your bench. But for the first 6 weeks, you're starting them, and you are weathering the storm of a Rice suspension. And then it's like midseason, you get to make a trade for a stud player. You can have a good 4 group of receivers. You can have a good couple running backs. You can even play it as an elite quarterback. But if I decided to wait on quarterback, that gives me another top RB or wide receiver that I could have taken in round 3. Like if you're somebody that waits on quarterback, you go Kyler late, you go Dak. Dak would have been fun with this team because you stack him with my 2 Cowboys. You could have taken then a T. Higgins instead. You could have taken Garrett Wilson. You could have had James Cook as your RB2. Like, this is so possible to do. It is so very possible to do in fantasy this year. To draft Rashee Rice in the 5th round, maybe it goes even later than that, maybe the top of the 6th round, and basically say, I'm going to handcuff myself early knowing that the payoff is going to be there. Because when you look at Rashee Rice in the first 3 games that he played last year before the injury, let's pull that up on the screen. Let's get myself out of the way here so that we can see what Rashee Rice was doing with Patrick Mahomes after he had been established as the number one in this offense. Now, granted, we have to acknowledge that Worthy was not necessarily full go yet at that time, and he's going to be a factor here. But Rashee Rice was going 17, 18, 29 points in full PPR before his injury in week 4. And he was, just a target. He's Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 5th and 6th round because you have to go 6 weeks without him. I will risk going 3-3 in my start to the season, knowing that it could mean I have Rashee Rice for the stretch run, and I find a way to incorporate a roster that has to get by in the early weeks. And then if I'm just assume that you're a good enough manager to make the playoffs. That's my thing. Maybe if your league awards a prize for the best record in the regular season, maybe you're taking yourselves out of the running for that. But otherwise, I think it is a tremendous benefit to be able to have a roster that adds basically a 2nd or 3rd round pick at a 5th or 6th round price. And all you have to do is manage your team in the beginning of the season. This is great news for drafters who aren't going to be fearful of a 6-game suspension because, oh my gosh, it sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It's less than it could have been, and it's coming at a better time than it could have come had this agreement not taken place before the season. Rashee Rice, to me, is a target in the 5th, 6th round. Maybe the 5th round is a stretch. Maybe you don't have the stomach for that, but I bet you'll be in a league where people are absolutely out, especially if it's kind of like one of those Chiefs-hating leagues. I live in Missouri, so I have a lot of Chiefs fans around. That's probably going to be different. People are going to be drafting Rashee Rice. In your league, if he's there in the 6th round, there's literally nothing to fear. Draft Rashee Rice this year in fantasy football. That's all I got.